Hi, my dear Astro family. I feel like we are standing at a massive crossroad. Saturn and Neptune have met on 0 degree of Aries. This isn't just another transit, this is a 36-year reset of your reality. So if you have been feeling physically exhausted, emotionally drained, or like the ground is shifting beneath your feet, I guess you are not alone. You are not imagining this. The old you is somehow dissolving to make room for a version of yourself that is both spiritually aligned and practically grounded. So, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how this super planet conjunction is hitting your natal chart, and more importantly, what concrete actions you need to take to stop the energy leaks and start building your future. So this is very much of a deep dive masterclass. I have broken this down by planet and by the angles of your chart. So if you know your chart, basically check it up where certain planets are placed. And if you have got any planets on 0 to 3 degree of the cardinal signs, such as Aries, Libra, Capricorn, or Cancer, then you must listen to this video. If you are just a beginner, I would say watch just the first section on the sun and the moon, and then this will define your physical health and your home life for the next 2 years. Potentially grab a pen. I'm going to be giving you practical remedies, steps for each placement. So we're gonna go through every single planet, what happens if Saturn Neptune triggers that in your natal chart as we speak. Now, this transit is big. Moving from Pisces into 0 degree of Aries, brings up very specific personal questions that a general video can't always answer. So if you want to go deeper, I discuss these transits every single week in my private membership community as well, where I provide live Q&A sessions and then we look at even real life scenarios. But I also have got a very supportive community. I've got a lot of webinars, a good 250 webinars available, and then you can choose whichever you want to kind of listen to so that you can somehow master yourself. It's not just about you understanding astrology, but you understanding yourself as well. And that's actually my aim to help you have a better understanding over your own life. So, but let's get started. And what I have done is I'm just going to be pretty much leaving the angles and one planet each time. So what's going to happen here is that you can see that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is taking place on 0 degree of Aries. So what happens if we have got the sun getting triggered in your natal chart? So it means that the sun is either going to be in the sign of Aries, in the sign of Cancer, in the sign of Libra, or in the sign of Capricorn. So I'm not going to be moving the chart around, but I'm just leaving the planets on the screen so that you can check, you can come back easily at any time. Now, I have made a couple of videos about Saturn and Neptune conjunction already, and I have broken this down onto the 12 signs as well. So you might want to check that out. Today, we are just focusing really on those aspects. And the reason why we are focusing on the hard aspects, such as conjunctions, squares, and oppositions, because those are the energies that push you forward. So this is going to be pretty much of a survival guide. So let's get going. Saturn, Neptune aspects to the natal chart and what happens, for example, with conjunctions, squares, and oppositions. Now, the core meaning of this is about dissolving the ego. We have got Saturn here, which is the structure, the reality, and then we've got Neptune, which is the disillusion and dreams, hit your sun, and that represents your identity and vitality. So the old you is somehow being washed away to pretty much make room for a new vision. Now, the challenge could be here is low energy, feeling lost, or facing a reality check regarding your life's direction. The goal should be to turn a dream into something concrete, into a disciplined identity. Now, if it is a conjunction, I would say that this is a total reset. At the beginning of this, you might feel like that your battery is kind of like at 10%. The things that used to define you, such as job, relationship, and you have to be looking at what sun rules in your natal chart, no longer feel solid. Imagine this as you building a castle in a fog. You have a massive vision, but maybe you feel tired or you feel a little bit invisible. So, the action that you should be doing here is that because it's such a highly physical transit, I think you don't need to push through the fatigue. But you have to be somehow formalizing your dream. Let's say you want to become a healer, an author, pretty much start the paperwork right now. Saturn demands a contract for your Neptunian dream. But potentially, you have to be avoiding making impulsive decisions. Wait for the fog to lift before quitting a job, for example, without any type of backup. Now, if it is a square, it means that your sun is somewhere in Cancer or Capricorn. There are certain type of external walls are closing in on your dreams, such as family obligations with Cancer or career demands with Capricorn, but somehow it's clashing with your need for a kind of spiritual or creative shift. You might feel blocked by authority figures or the system or all the regulations. It feels like the world is kind of like saying no to your vision. However, you need to be able to say no to energy vampires. You have to ask yourself the question, is this obstacle real or am I sabotaging myself because I'm afraid to succeed? I think you need to use this square in a way. It's a friction to kind of sharpen your focus. You know, squares are meant to be creating action. So you can use this tension to finish a project you have been dreaming about potentially for years. And then if you have got an opposition, it means that the sun is in the sign of Libra. So it means that other people become the mirror for your Saturn-Neptune confusion. So you might have to be dealing with a partner who is drifting a little bit. Drifting is very Neptunian. Or a boss who is oppressive. That's very much Saturnian. And you might even feel drained by your relationships. You might be looking for stability in others, but they might be coming back to you with certain type of uncertainty. What this transit tries to teach you is that you cannot fix someone else's confusion right now. You know, maybe you have to be pulling your energy back into your own sun. So you're going to have to focus on your own health, on your own routines, on your own goals, basically. And then if a relationship you are in is slightly bit vague, Saturn demands you to kind of set a review date. You know, don't let things drift indefinitely because you might be regretting that later on. So, a bit of a summary here for you. Conjunction with your sun is a bit of a foggy seed. You know, I would say that you need to start small. You know, you have to focus on your physical habits to ground the big vision. If it's a square, it acts like a pressure cooker. So build a structure to protect your vitality, your creative energy, because the real world is going to show up there and it's going to be demanding. And if it's an opposition, it's basically acting like a mirror. So it is telling you not to let other people's chaos dictate who you are and what your goals are. So ensure that you set firm boundaries. So I hope this helps. And then if it did, dear son, then I would like to invite you to actually like this video, follow my channel because I am going to be making a lot more helpful videos for you. But let's move on to the moon. So I'm just going to put moon on. And sorry, before we do that, I want to go back to the sun because a couple of other things that came to my mind. Sun represents our physical heart and our energy levels. And with Saturn, it's about contraction, and Neptune is kind of like leakage. So it's an unexplained fatigue. You might feel like that you have slept 8 hours, but you still feel kind of like heavy when you wake up. So this is not necessarily a time when you need to be doing a no pain, no gain type of workout. I think you need to be doing a little bit more low impact movement. Let's do walking and swimming. You might want to be checking your vitamin D or your iron levels as well. Neptune rules the fluids within the body, and Saturn rules the bones and the minerals. So this could be certain type of deficiency that you might be experiencing with it. There could be a spiritual burnout with that too. Now, anything that hits 0 degree is a very public. 0 degree of Aries is very public. So it's also about moving from a private realm into the world, basically. So it is asking you not to hide anymore. Your private dreams or your failures are going to be seen by the public. So I would say that, if you are ready to launch a business, the world is watching, and that's a good one, right? Because you want to launch something that you want to be famous for. Now, if you are in your early 40s, like you were born somewhere in 1982, 1984, or you are in your late 50s, somewhere between 65 to 67, then at that time, Saturn and Neptune were in the sign of Libra. So it's actually kind of like you are experiencing a certain type of an opposition coming up for you, or you are experiencing a closing square. So it might be a bit of a midlife reality check. I would say that this is a now or never transit. So if you have been doing something behind the scenes, then actually you have to come out of your shadow, and then you have to be somehow visible, let's say in the next 20 years. It is asking you to make something real. Stop dreaming about it. Okay, so let's move on to the moon. And the moon is the most intimate, private part of a person's life. This represents your home, your mother, your emotional security. While the sun was about who I am, the moon is about, do I feel safe? So imagine this is a leaking container. Moon is our emotional container. So when Saturn, which represents the walls, and then Neptune, which is about dissolution, hit the moon, it feels like the walls of your house are turning into certain type of sponges. So therefore, it shows an emotional exhaustion, feeling flooded by other people's problems, or a strange sense of like homesickness, even when you are at home. So the goal, or what this transit is trying to teach you, is to build a spiritual container. So you need a routine that protects your peace, basically. So if it's a conjunction somewhere between 0 to 3 degree of Aries, meaning that your moon is there, this could indicate emotional burnout because you want to be a pioneer, you want to be a warrior, but you feel like you're running through kind of like this waist deep water. There could be issues with your physical home, so look out for literal water leaks, dampness, mold, because this is the way how your universe might try to reflect your internal state. I think stop taking on kind of rescue missions of others. This, practically speaking, this is about decluttering your home. Throw away objects that carry heavy emotional memories. Saturn wants space. Neptune wants purity. What do you use water for? To clean your body, right? So that's where the purity comes from. I think you might want to watch out for food sensitivities or allergies. The moon rules the stomach. Neptune can make you kind of allergic to reality, certain chemicals. Now, if it's a square, it means that your moon is in either Cancer or Capricorn. And that might represent kind of like a caretaker's crisis. Maybe you are being a little bit squeezed between your duty to your family or your need to escape and rest a little bit. The duty to the family comes from Saturn, and the escape or the rest comes from Neptune. I mean, imagine that there is this female figure in your life who may need more help than usual, and they may be acting vague or evasive as well, leaving you to handle the heavy lifting. So, it's kind of like having to learn to put the do not disturb sign on or into your calendar. If it's not scheduled, Saturn basically won't respect it. So this might be asking you to check whether you are a martyr. Square demands you to stop the drama and set the boundary. I can help you for 1 hour, but then I'm going for a walk, for example, or I've got work to do. And then with the opposition, meaning that your moon is in the sign of Libra, it can indicate a disappearing partner. The moon is going to be looking for emotional security in relationships, but the other person feels like, you know, they don't want to be there, or they are acting like a ghost, or they feel a burden somehow. But it is also a feeling when you feel lonely in a room, even though you are surrounded by people, because you might be projecting your own need for structure onto your partner, or they are projecting their confusion onto you as well. I think this is asking you to stop looking for a hero. It is trying to teach you that you are the hero, actually. But if the moon is in the sign of Libra, we can use art, music, or to design something. It might be telling us that you don't have to talk about your emotions, kind of paint them or play them. Or maybe this is an invitation that you have to be trying to connect with someone, but I don't need to be a people pleaser anymore. I need to be able to create boundaries. Also, I would like to mention that this is a huge attractor type of combination as well. So this could talk to you about attracting a new partner. Now, often with Saturn Neptune on the moon, I would say that certain type of family secrets or ancestral fog that might get exposed or lifted. So you might find out something new about your family history, or you finally understand the pattern, maybe connected to addiction or sacrifice that started generations ago. I think you can utilize this transit to formalize your lineage. Maybe you want to start a family tree or write down the stories of your elders, because this gives the ghosts, that's Neptune, a skeleton, which is Saturn. So with conjunctions, it's a little bit raw and vulnerable. This is about fixing the leak in your habits, in your house, in your emotional well-being. With the square, we are a bit squeezed. We might be resentful as well. So this is asking you to stop being the martyr for work or for family. And then with the opposition, it brings up the topic of loneliness and a bit of a drifting. It is asking you to find security within yourself, not necessarily in the partner, or do not allow others to kind of project their insecurities onto you. So, have you noticed any literal water leaks in your house lately? Tell me in the comments, because I've noticed the pattern with this transit. Um, that it's very possible to experience certain type of leaks, emotional leaks as well. Now let's move on to Mercury. So what happens if Mercury conjunct, or there's a conjunction to Mercury square or opposition? Mercury As well as Venus represents your daily life, really. So Mercury is how we think. Venus would be how we spend money. But with Mercury, there could be a bit of a mental fog here. Mercury is the bridge between our thoughts and the reality. And Saturn Neptune here is like trying to drive through a thick fog with a GPS that keeps recalculating. So therefore, this could indicate some misunderstandings, brain fog, technical glitches. But what this transit is trying to teach you to move from logical thinking to more of an intuitive kind of precision. Now, you know, if it's one of the hard aspects, imagine this as your processor being too slow. Like I forget names, I lose my keys, I send an email to the wrong person. This is not necessarily the greatest time to sign a contract without a Saturn's expertism or expertise. Yeah, that's the right word. Such as a lawyer, for example, because Neptune might be hiding the fine print. Or Mercury rules travel, so it can indicate certain type of delays. So it is asking you to triple check the tickets, the data, the information that you are receiving. I think do not just trust your memory with this. Maybe use a notebook. That's very Saturnian to capture your ideas, and that's the Neptune there. Or if you receive a confusing email or a text, do not reply immediately. Maybe you want to be waiting 24 hours to gain certain type of clarity because that Neptunian fog has to settle somehow. But this is super good for writing fiction, spiritual teachings, for example, uh, because the structure is somehow finally available for your imagination. And then now I'm ready to kind of talk about that. It really feels like that it's time to kind of get the knowledge that we need to be able to make our dream come true. Now, whether this is a square, as with the square, it would indicate that Mercury is either in Cancer or Capricorn. And maybe you are feeding your mind with certain type of pessimism, or potentially people are telling you that you are not there yet. Or maybe you are thinking about your family or you are thinking about your job, and maybe that is holding you back from moving towards your dreams. So do not allow the mind to kind of talk to you um, about negativity to you. Now, if Mercury is in the sign of Libra, that would talk to you about maybe having to have a conversation with a partner. Where does this relationship is going? About your personal autonomy. And maybe I don't have to be right at all times, but maybe I don't have to allow people to talk to me in certain ways. So, of course, that Saturn Neptune is trying to teach you to become a spiritual warrior. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but this is my opinion, right? Or I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I think you are wrong. So, Mercury in Libra is often trying to please others by words. And Saturn Neptune says, enough is enough. We have to be treated fairly with equality. Now, if it's Venus, it's a reality check on your desire. Venus represents what we value, money and love, and Saturn Neptune here is kind of like the morning after transit. So the moment the lights come on, in the club, you see things as they are, as they really are. That's how it feels like. So we're gonna have to get real about finances, financial leaks, or the feeling of being unloved, unappreciated. What it tries to teach you is that you have to be able to love yourself before you expect others to love you. Let's call it as a sustainable love, a financial integrity. Now, if it's triggering Venus by a hard aspect, so conjunction, squares, and opposition, you might feel a bit of a cooling down moment in your relationship, or you might realize you have been spending money on things that don't actually make you happy. You might realize a partner isn't who you thought they were. This isn't always bad. It just means that the fantasy is over and the real work is actually happening in your relationship or on yourself. Watch out for vague expenses, or you want to be subscribing to something, or you want to get rich in a quick way, and so forth. So there's a bit of a financial audit here. Maybe print out your bank statement, highlight every leak there, cancel what you don't need. But also, this is about kind of like a timeless fashion. So I'm gonna be decorating my home with something meaningful. Uh, or maybe I want to be working on my beauty as well. Maybe you have to ask some hard questions, when it comes to love. Are we building something or are we just drifting away? So, with Mercury, this was about mental exhaustion or absorbing the wrong information. That's why we need to be triple checking everything. Uh, we might need to take notes. With Venus, this is the financial leaks, the romantic ghosting, really. So we have to be auditing how we spend money and we have to set like real relationship goals. When Saturn or Neptune hits Mercury or Venus, scams go through the roof. So if an offer sounds too good to be true, just think of it this way. This is Neptune. If they are pressurizing you to act now or never, that's a bit distorted Saturn. So you might want to be walking away, you know. Um, with Venus, this is the love that we receive or the love that we give, and not just to others, but to ourselves as well. So, of course, Neptune is the planet of infatuation, while Saturn is the planet of commitment. So, I think self-love is a topic with Venus. We can receive love from others under this transit, but maybe we have to fix the leak in our self-worth. If you feel invisible, unattractive, or you feel like that you have to earn love by overextending yourself, we can call it as a martyrdom. So if you spend all your energy helping others, hoping they will notice and then love you back, but they don't, you end up resentful or exhausted. A no is an act of love as well, because practice saying no to things that drain you. It's not an act of love for others, but it's an act of love towards the self. And this is Aries. So it is talking to us about self-love. It is since, Saturn rules the skin and Neptune rules the spirit, you know, uh, and then Venus rules the skin as well. So maybe we want to do some salt bath with Neptune, Saturn, Venus, or you want to get a professional massage or the skincare routine. Of course, there is the love received from others, and Neptune creates the rose-colored glasses. And Saturn wants you to start seeing things clearly, not just the fantasy there, because the fantasy is going to dissolve somehow. We have to realize that our partners potentially are also human beings with flaws, and they might not be able to save us. Now, that's especially true with an opposition. You know, maybe it's a partner who used to be kind of perfect, but now they become a little bit distant or start showing signs of struggle, work stress and so forth. And then how I can be there for them. I think this might be teaching us that we have to stop trying to make something perfect. Saturn loves things that are real. So let's love something for their flaws as well, not only for their potentials. And if you are in a certain type of situationship, Saturn might demand a conversation here. So where is this going? If there is no plan, then the Neptunian fog will eventually drown the connection. So, on one hand, with the conjunction, it really feels like it's a spiritual union. It's about you want or having to want a deep soul level connection, but you can feel lonely with this as well. This is about learning to be happy in your own skin, in your own company, and stop waiting for a partner to kind of get your life going. You have to be able to get your life going. Now, if it's a square, square is always a squeeze, a squeeze. So it's usually external duties such as work and family with Venus or Mercury being in the sign of Cancer or Capricorn are kind of like suffocating my romantic life. And maybe we don't have time for something that we pleasure. And and then with the oppositions, that's a mirror. So the partner is holding up a mirror to you, and maybe they are asking you to have more of a survival instinct, or or they are actually telling you that you have to be able to love yourself, and so on. So that's oh, and another thing actually. With Venus, which is also about our desires. We need to be able to desire something. And whatever we desire, we can actually make it happen. That's exactly what the Saturn Neptune conjunction would be about. So I hope that helps you, dear Venusian person. And if it does, then I hope to see you on my channel more often and like the video and subscribe or share it with others because I don't think anyone kind of like has done this type of video and I think it's well needed. Now let's move on to Mars. So what happens if Mars is going to get activated in your natal chart? So by conjunctions, squares, or oppositions. You know what? Mars is kind of like where the rubber meets the road. Mars is our engine, it's our drive, it represents anger, but also it's about strength and vitality as well. So when we have got this Saturn Neptune hitting your Mars, it's like driving a Ferrari through, a dark pitch or like a swamp. So this is a bit of a deflated warrior here. Mars wants to go, Saturn wants to stop, Neptune wants to sleep. So this is a massive conflict here. How are things gonna get done? And we can feel aimless, we can be physically burnt out, we can lose our libido, we can lose our motivation, our drive. But the goal here is that we're gonna have to be able to awaken our inspiration and our actions needs to be inspired by something. So if it's a conjunction, meaning that your Mars is somewhere between 0 to 3 degree, this is about having a vision, but sometimes lacking the energy to execute it. And we can feel paralyzed by certain type of fears, or we don't know how to get going. This could indicate some inflammation or infections that don't quite go away because your body might be trying to force you to, or your body is forcing you to slow down a little bit. I think this is about you working 8 hours. Make sure that you have got, let's say, if you work, 1 hour, then you might want to take a 5-minute break and so forth. This is about maybe doing some some spiritual discipline with this as well. Like you can do Tai Chi, yoga, swimming. You need movement that is a bit fluid, and that's Neptune, but also you are disciplined about it, and that's Saturn. Now, if it's square, meaning that your Mars is in Cancer or Capricorn, you can feel angry, but you don't know where to direct it. And then it can feel like that I'm fighting a ghost or I'm fighting a kind of like a machine, or an invisible system. So maybe you feel like that you're working hard, but you aren't seeing the results. And this can lead to some type of passive aggressive behavior, actually. This is telling you, in a way, to stop trying to fix everything. Choose one concrete task, that's Saturn, that serves your higher purpose, that's Neptune, and finish it. And then move on to the next one, then. And maybe try to find a way to kind of vent your frustration. Maybe, I don't know, you want to do journaling or a punching bag. I mean, Mars, potentially the punching bag is better than journaling. Because if you let the steam build up in your body, at one point it's very explosive. Now, if it's an opposition, meaning that your Mars is in Libra, you might have got some enemies to deal with, or people who are undermining your efforts. Or you might feel like that others are lazy or unfair and they're draining your strength, they are demotivating you. It can represent certain type of conflict in your partnership, like who does the work, who makes the money or whatever. So, are you gonna allow that or are you gonna stand up for yourself? And in business and love, I think you're gonna have to write things down exactly like who is responsible for what. So it's surely no vague agreements because it can bite you in the butts later on. If someone is kind of creating drama around you, this might be asking you to walk away. Your Mars energy is way too precious to waste on people who don't have a plan. So don't hang around people who walk around aimlessly. Now, Mars also represents your love and sex life as well to a certain extent. And, this could, Mars is to a certain extent is also the desire, but it's a physical desire. So you might see some sudden drop in your sex life or sex drive or the feeling that the passion is kind of more of a duty and I don't know if I enjoy that anymore. Or maybe you just want to be a little bit lazier, but your soul is asking for a different kind of fuel. It's about recalibrating what I get passionate about. You can even feel like with Mars that the partner has become weak or vague. And instead of getting angry, how can we support each other? I think you might want to be watching out for some mechanical failures. Mars rules tools and machinery, and with Neptune involved, things might break for no apparent reason, actually. Maybe it's a water damage or electrical shorts. Or if your car or computer is acting up, don't ignore it. Saturn demands maintenance. It says fix it now before it becomes a Neptunian disaster. But also how you can boost your immunity. Mars is your immunity system, and Saturn Neptune can make kind of like a bit like it can make you allergic to the environment. So people around you, but maybe you have to be cleaning your filters. It is about you detoxing your physical space, detoxing your body as well, so you can kind of feel like that you are breathing again. So there is a bit of a danger here of exhaustion and frustration, but it can represent positive things as well. Your dreams become real. You can get a creative idea and then you can make it as a tangible asset. Let's say if you've been dreaming of writing a book because it happens in your third house, or start a business if it's in your 10th house, or you want to be launching a channel for years if it's your 11th house. This transit gives you the discipline to finally
finish that vision. Or this transit is kind of like it's not a fluffy spirituality. It is more of a mature approach to the mystical. So you can gain the ability to explain spiritual concepts, for example, but in a practical way. Mars is practical. You should find ways of integrating your intuition into your professional career because Mars' biggest achievement is usually around career matters anyway. Um, I would say, especially with Mars and Venus, this is about no nonsense connections anymore. This is about clearing out these situationships or these maybe people, and it might feel like a loss at the beginning, but eventually it might bring you a more committed person. It's about moving from that infatuation to kind of like a growth mindset, the growth kind of love, So who I can grow with, who I can grow together with, who I can actually rely on. And it's kind of like I don't just want to be daydreaming, I want someone who is going to be taking action. Mm, okay, let's move on to Jupiter. I think I've mentioned everything with Mars. So Jupiter, well, and this is an interesting one here because Jupiter wants to expand something. It represents your belief system, but also to a certain extent finances and the meaning to life. Jupiter is the planet of yes, but Saturn and Neptune are a little bit like yes, okay, no, or is it sustainable? Is it actually meaningful? So while Jupiter wants to grow without limits, Saturn is actually giving the limit. Saturn wants to build a foundation. We cannot reach the sky without, a plane that is on the ground first. And the plane has to be well maintained so that it doesn't crash in the sky, right? And Neptune wants us to find our sole purpose. So maybe you have to be realizing that some of your big plans were illusions, or maybe you feel like that your growth is being slowed down because I have been kind of chasing the clouds without any type of reality. You can get a lucky break with this actually, but how am I going to turn that into a long-term legacy? So with hard aspects, with a conjunction, for example, again, if your Jupiter is somewhere between 0 to 3 degree, this is maybe a major investment that you want to do. Maybe you want to be creating a spiritual business, for example. This is actually one of the billionaires aspect, but with a bit of a spiritual twist. You have the vision with Jupiter, Neptune, and then you have got the discipline with Saturn to make it happen. So it's something to do with going professional in something. Like if you have a hobby that you have been expanding on or learning about, this is about making it as a legal business entity. You know, the Jupiter wants to do everything, Saturn says, do one thing perfectly. Pick your most Neptunian project, something that is creative or spiritual, and then give it your 100% effort. And that's Saturn. Now, if you have got a square, meaning that Jupiter is in Cancer or Capricorn, it's a bit of a crisis of faith. You might feel like your luck has run out, or the politics, the system is blocking your expansion. Or you can be overextending yourself. You may have promised way too much and then you cannot deliver it. That's Jupiter and Neptune. And then now you get the bill, and that's Saturn. So maybe you have to be looking at your finances, your projects. Where are you leaking money or time in your life? Look at your projects, whether they can survive, or is your like expansion is based on your truth. Is it morally acceptable? Or am I deceiving somehow? And that's Neptune. Or am I cutting corners because Saturn will not allow that? Jupiter loves cutting corners actually, because somehow it will be exposed. And then with an opposition, meaning that Jupiter is in the sign of Libra, something legal or relational mirror that is happening here. So you might be dealing with partners or legal entities that challenging your big ideas. Or you might find that that a partner's dreams are actually draining your resources, and we are kind of like in a disagreement about who is true and like whose truth is it, or who is wrong. It's kind of like not being on the same spiritual or financial page, basically. And or maybe someone is judging you over how much you have, or you are judging them by how much they have, you know. So this transit is also want you to kind of go through this inner expansion. Like you attract teachers or mentors, and then you form certain type of connections with them, and they are going to be challenging your growth, but also they are taking you seriously, and they challenge you because they want you to expand somehow. I think this is actually one of the best one to manifest wealth, basically, but it's something connected to spirituality, creative work, something that you have been dreaming about for a while. It's kind of like moving from a student to become a teacher. So you might notice that people start looking to you for wisdom, and because you've got the experience, Jupiter, and you've got the expertise, and that's Saturn. Jupiter rules abundance. Neptune can dissolve that though. So I would say that, check your automatic payments and stuff like that, because it might show that something is bleeding your resources. And, this is a little bit like having to plug the leaks. And then once you've done that, actually the abundance returns. Obviously, that's not just physically, but energetically as well. Let's look at the angles, okay? So what happens if it's connected to your ascendant, midheaven, descendant, or the IC, which is the bottom of your chart? Well, if it's the ascendant, and I'm gonna be brief here, if it's the ascendant, it's a rebirth. The version of you that existed for the last 36 years is basically dissolving. So you should change your physical appearance, your name, how you present yourself to the world. This is about rebranding. But you can feel invisible for a few months before emerging. But you have to be finding that authoritative version of yourself, your voice, basically. It's asking you not to try to fit in. Start building a life that actually fits your soul's purpose. Self-love is going to become big for you, surely. And how are you going to be protecting your energy? Because you shouldn't be allowing people to blur your own boundaries, basically. Now, if it happens on your descendant, it means that it's pretty much happening somewhere in your seventh house. That's a reality check for your marriage and your business contracts. If you are in a vague or deceptive relationship, that will dissolve. Or if a partner who is solid can become your rock as well, and they might be motivating you to go towards your dream also. So it depends on your scenario. You can enter a committed partnership with someone who is a healer, or someone who is very disciplined, someone who is serious. This is about starting a real partnership where we want to achieve something, and we've got that winning mindset. But also, you have to be able to learn to receive love for who you are, not for what you do for others or what others want you to be like. And if it's in your midheaven, well, I would say that's a complete overhaul of your public reputation and life direction. You may leave let's say, a corporate job, a rigid job, for something that is more creative, more spiritual, more kind of like a service-orientated type of stuff. You might even turn your creative hobby into something professional. You want to be in a more serious career. This is also about the mastery of your own vision. And I'm gonna go after it. Well, if you have been kind of like faking your career, but what I mean by that is that you just do it because of the bills and so forth, then basically it's going to be revealed. Or if you have been working hard um, on something, eventually you might, in a way, your work is going to become official. And then if it's in your IC, which represents your home and your roots, this might talk to us about changes in your home environment. So you might be moving houses. You might be dealing with some hidden issues in your homes, like leaks and foundation. But also you can kind of sober up regarding family baggages, family karmic duties, childhood conditioning, that it might be time to kind of work through. And maybe you need to be able to feel at home in your own skin. You might want to be building a domestic life that is more of a sanctuary for you rather than a source of stress. If it's a stress, how am I going to eliminate that? How am I going to dissolve that? So therefore, it's an emotional decluttering. Surely, if a living situation is draining you, I think Saturn might be giving you the plan to move eventually. And Neptune might be giving you the vision where to go. So this is big on relocation topics. So, well, very briefly, guys, this is how I am seeing this transit. Of course, a couple of tips that I would like to give you. Look at your chart. If you have any angle somewhere between 0 to 3 degree of the cardinal signs, especially, then this video should act like a roadmap for pretty much the next 2.5 years, basically. At the same time, you have to be looking at what house it falls into. The house is going to tell you the area of life where this planetary energy is going to be playing out. So that's important. And you might even want to be looking at, let's say if it triggers your Venus, what Venus rules in that natal chart. Oh, I almost forgot to talk about Saturn. What happens if it happens on your Saturn? It means that you have got a Saturn return. But I might need to make a separate video about that because there is a lot to mention about it. But yeah, I mean, that's super rare. So if you've got a Saturn return exactly with Neptune joining, that's so rare. That's once in a lifetime event. So if you were born in somebody 1996 or 1997, basically it's your first Saturn return. Or if you were born 66 to 67, this would be your second Saturn return. But it's about anchoring your dreams, basically. This is like a spiritual architect. This is about, yes, it's a cold shower of reality as well, but it's a sacred initiation towards a different future. It can be an existential crisis or confusion, but the clarity should hit you. I think you are realizing that, let's say, your standard 9 to 5 job is just so traditional and it doesn't work for me. It's not enough for me. I need like a mission basically. So I want to be building a career or lifestyle that is providing safety and security, financial stability, but it comes with the spiritual meaningfulness.
So, this is then telling you that the next 20 or 30 years are very much of a life-changing period for you. Maybe you've spent your 20s, for example, if it's your first Saturn return, doing what you were supposed to do. And then now you dissolve that somehow, and then you want to go towards a path that is actually more you. So you might quit a secure job because you want to start something more creative. And I would say this is a set a return for you. So this is not a flaky move. This is kind of like you're building an infrastructure of a business. You're making that dream as your new reality. Um, yes, so that's the Saturnian one. Oh, well, if it's your second Saturn return, so meaning that you are around 58 to 60, so you were born somewhere around 66, this is about a legacy, basically. So you might be looking at a retirement. Is it possible? Is it not possible? You know, it's about retiring from something, but also retiring to something. Aries doesn't want to retire. So maybe I retire from a job, but I retire to committing to write a book, or I'm going to start a nonprofit, or I'm going to become a certain type of a mentor and stuff like that. So, why the first Saturn return is, yeah, I get a job and I'm going to pay my dues and taxes. I'm going to find my calling. I'm going to build it up. And then the second one is something that is a bit boring, rigid. Uh, I might feel like I'm a little bit lost in what direction I want to go. The secret with this is hard work, basically. It's about getting inspired, working hard on something that you truly love. I would say that if you have got a Saturn return right now, do not ignore your intuition. Saturn tends to ignore the feelings, just do the work. But we have got Neptune there as well. And actually, it might be telling you that the work is your feelings. Um, yes. So, guys, I hope this video helps. And I hope to see you again in a different video. So have a lovely week, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.